and welcome to the Priggya Arora Show, where we discuss law, entrepreneurship, and innovation with people who have been there and done that. My name is Priggya Arora, founder of PA Legal, an intellectual property law firm in India. And our guest for today is Mr. Tarun Khurana. He is the partner of Khurana and Khurana. He has been my mentor throughout my journey, and I'm super excited to have him on my show. Welcome, Tarun sir, on the show.
Great, Priggya. Thank you so very much. And it's always been a pleasure to stay in touch with you. And I remember my days when we were working together for several years. And great to see you growing and great to be a part of the session as well.
Thank you so much, sir. So my initial starting point in my career has been you. Whatever I am today is because of you. And with these words, I'll ask my first question, which is, can you tell us your life story and how did you become the person you are today?
So I come from a very straightforward, humble background. My father was in the Indian Air Force. So I did my education in government schools all across the country. And did my engineering thereafter, did my master's from BITS Pilani thereafter, did my MBA and my law together. My MBA was from IIM Lucknow and did my law thereafter. And ever since I think I came out of college and was working with software companies, innovation, filing of, thinking of ideas was an activity that most of these companies did prompt and encourage. And therefore, I was a part of certain patent processes and portfolio developments as part of being in those companies. And then thereafter thought it appropriate to, try and sort of scale up a practice and see how things move out. And therefore, I joined a law practice based out of Delhi for about a year or so. And basically to just understand how things are on ground reality, how patent prosecution and drafting is to be done, and then did a fair amount of about 40, 50 patent drafts in about a year, and then decided to see if we can try and scale up our own practice and see how entrepreneurship is and how you've started a few years back is when I started off in 2008 with me and my father, and both of us are founding partners. Both of us fortunately are first generation entrepreneurs in that sense, and we've been glad to be where we are today.
Wow, sir, awesome. Now a team of 220, and once upon a time you were two people. I'm sure it would feel great and honored at this point of time in life. So, sir, today's podcast is basically focused on how we can start our own practice, build up, scale up, and things like that. So, let's take our viewers from along a journey. Like I think, like when I started up, I had a lot of fear in my mind that how will I do? How will I leave my job and how will I start up my own practice? So I think it all starts with that. What are your take on how to start up, or what? If people are just thinking that they should start up, what should do they think in there and process further?
So I think quite a few things are very important when you're starting up. One, the most important is how much can you suffer in continuity. I think that is what is very important because, at least from my little experience of the last 14 years of having grown as completely from scratch, where we used to put the shutter down for our office and put it up again in the morning and sort of be all alone trying to do business development and then also maintain an Excel sheet of whatever few invoices were being raised to try and see if we can get a few people, which obviously we couldn't afford, and therefore cost was a big issue. So I think one very, very critical ingredient is that you have to be perseverance oriented. You have to be, and then that perseverance has to be very consistent. A lot of people think that they're very hardworking and they'll probably do it for a month, 2 months, about a year, and then perhaps realize that it is too much and revenue is not coming in, because in the domain that we are, where prosecution is a fair bit of the practice, most of your whatever you earn, perhaps in the first few years, at least that is how it was for us, was getting reinvested back as official fees, as government fees back into the patent office. So there was very little that we could actually make in the first 3, 4, 5 years, because that churning around was so much. Because while you were growing up year on year, your official fees was also growing up, but that official fees was coming only about 3 to 4 months down the lane from the client side. And therefore, while you were growing, you were not making anything out of the whole exercise. And therefore, consistency is very critical. You have to be very, very consistent every day. Come at a defined time, go at a defined time, just repeat it again. You may want to do business development by sending out a few hundred emails a day, or add people on LinkedIn, or whatever the usual business development strategies are. But the response is so minimal that if you actually take it to your heart and start feeling bad about it, I don't think things would take forward. You have to come back with the same zeal in spite of every day being a low day compared to the previous day, and come back and do it and do it, and then repeatedly do it, and tirelessly essentially ensure that the efforts are not minimized at all. The second point is, you have to be absolutely independent. You as a professional, I think when you are starting a law practice, the intent should be that you should have that capability to be able to independently handle the project when it comes. Because if you're a professional who probably is very strong on the legal side, but from an IP perspective, not technically strong enough, then doing patent work on your own will become very difficult. And even if you do it, it will not be up to the mark, and therefore you will rather lose reputation than gain it in the market, and that is not good in the first few years at all. In fact, not good anytime for that matter. So it's very important that you do not depend on non-founders or for people whom you are hiring or bringing on board as non-partners to do the work. Correct. Because then you'll always be dependent on them. So I think if these two things are there, that you can do the work yourself, even if you were just doing trademark, but if you're a good lawyer and understand trademark practices and procedure and can sort of guide, advise, file, respond, do opposition, the whole life cycle, you should be able to do it yourself. And only then is when you will be able to scale up, because otherwise you'll always have dependence on others. And because retaining talent is very difficult for initial few years, and people always, usually employees would like to work with bigger firms with more firms with there's more cushion around, where Saturdays are off, where things are more comfortable, where basically life is more comfortable. You have to ensure that you are fully sufficiently working together. And these two or three things are very critical from my perspective.
Very, very rightly said. I think first year, like when I started, for me, the first year was like that only. I didn't know how much money I earned, but all of it, where it go, that also I didn't know. I didn't know. So I think, but yeah, as we grow, do things get better? And what is there a tipping point which comes, or is it like a stagnant, steady growth, or is it an exponential growth?
To my perspective, growth is always proportional to how much hard work you put in. And not just hard work as in donkey hard work, not smart work is what I would say, but there is no replacement. There is, irrespective of how smart and innovative you might be, if you are not putting in about 12 to 14 hours a day, scaling up in a practice which is not just IP, any legal, non-legal, any social media venture, any digital marketing practice, whatever it might be, it will be extremely difficult if you're thinking that that entire mentality will be that I'm working 8 hours and while I'm an entrepreneur. Both of them just can't go in sync with each other at all. You have to be slogging yourself for years and years, and with a very clear intent that at the end of the day, where is your margin coming in from? Where is profitability there? What kind of client should you target? What age are you? Because when I started, I was 24. So I had a lot to play. I had to act more mature because I didn't have much experience, relevant experience in IP, just about 10 to 12 months, as I said, with another law firm. So I didn't have much and with 24 years, nobody takes you seriously, particularly large companies. So whatever and whosoever is taking you seriously, you have to ensure that you do strong, good work that is recommendable, and they can refer you to additional clients. But more than that, do consistent hard work of 12 to 14 hours, if I were to quantify that, every single day for at least 4 or 5 years. That's the kind of time frame that I would put across. And be smart, because you should know where your revenues are coming in from, what kind of clients. Because if you're working only for startups, where you're getting, for example, just a facilitator fee of 10,000 rupees, and that too comes after 6 to 8 to 12 months or so, neither would it be exciting, neither would it keep you motivated enough that there's so much of drafting quality that you are investing in, but you are not getting the right value for it. So you have to be and then you have to focus on international clients, foreign clients, international entities, because that's where perhaps more margin comes in from as well. So that balance in terms of how much to travel, where to travel, because traveling also incurs cost, and you don't want to be in a situation where you are taking a loan or you are sort of asking for funding, etc., because that's not the norm, and that probably will dilute the whole. Because if you take a funding of a few lakhs or even a CR for 20, 30, 40% of a stake, at the end of the day, you will for all your life be minting money for somebody else at the end of the day. So I think it's very important that the client selection happens, and that depends, because if I were to start a firm now, I would probably have very little of my focus on startups and individual clients. But at that time, startups were the saviors, and therefore I did a lot of events, and I used to go and speak and start, because there are very few firms in India that were doing that level of targeting, and therefore I thought there was more bigger focus there. Educational institutes were just attempting to develop portfolios, so that was another area that we focused upon, because while the fees was low, at least there was volume that we could bank upon, and I knew how to draft 2 applications a day, maybe 3 a day, whatever that number was. I was never dependent on anybody else to sort of do the work, and therefore was always able to sort of manage it accordingly.
Yeah. So as you said, like, because times have changed and we have options, like we can, make a base price for us, that below this price we would not go for drafting, or will not file a FAR response below this price. Do you think that is also a good strategy? Because then we'll be able to focus on clients with whom we want to work, and not on the clients where cash flow is not coming.
So I think very differently, and I'm being brutally honest, because these are, things that I have learned. So whatever I'm saying is my personal perspective. Nobody else may sort of find it, maybe relevant for them in that sense. But for me, there is never a base price. I'm very happy to work. I've done patent drafting initially on for the one of my first clients was a company based in Delhi, which was a company called Root Guru, which is no longer there. And I drafted about 2 applications for them at about 5,000 rupees an application. And I look at, again, very personally speaking, I don't look at what is the best bare minimum. If I were to work with an IIT, or even with SAIL, India Limited, but the name is big enough for me to get a good reference point, and for me to be able to use that name for all my perpetuity that we have represented them. I will not look at the cost, for instance. I will also not look at the cost if I were to work for a startup that I feel very connected to the idea. And that they probably may become very big. I would also not hesitate to work for individuals who have a good, academic background, and financial otherwise matters solely now at this particular stage. But fortunately that we have a team of about 100, 120 people, that their drafting is being done by people with varied experiences. You can always have a relatively lower experienced person representing a more cost conscious client for that matter. But even initially on, even if I were to do it on my own, I would look at whom I'm working for, and if I feel excited about it, I would not hesitate at all working at what, even for free for that matter. Because if that person is going to eventually file a PCT and go to 20 countries, I would rather work for a client like that, rather than a client which probably may only file an Indian application, or maybe 20 of them as a startup, and never go outside. So all of those are parameters that you consider, but surely never a 10,000 rupee or a 15 or a 30 or a 40,000 rupee base below which you will not come. I have never been of that sorts.
Yeah. So the idea was for asking this question was like how to choose clients. Like, is it on the base price? But you have already told us about the parameters, and I think that works very well. Like, we should have, like, as lawyers, we should also have freedom to choose our clients instead of, any person coming to us, and for every person we are working. So I think that was the whole idea behind it.
Correct. For the moment, I think the last 14 years, even though we work with some of the biggest entities now for drafting, and we have perhaps been ranked by Managing IP as the highest PCT filing law firm for the last 4 or 5 years consistently. But I don't think we have said no to any client, Priggya, being very honest, in the last 14 years. We've quoted and they've countered back, and we have said, no, we would not be able to. But that's not that we refused to represent the client. And obviously there's a conflict. But I always look at that particular client as giving me 10 other references rather than just look at that client.
Correct. Absolutely.
My always view is that if I say no to him, any potential reference for him in perpetuity is also gone.
Yeah.
But if I say yes to him at a lower value, then all the references, if we do good work for him, then all references that might come from him for all time to come will sort of directly come to us. And that is how you, because he may because there was somebody, for example, in the firm who went out and became an in-house counsel. And I have many references of that nature, whom we worked with, whom we had good relationships with. They wanted to work with a corporate. They went into a corporate and then we started working with them. So antagonizing anybody, saying that, we will not be able to represent for whatever reason has never been at least the mindset here. And but we obviously, quote, and if they counter back, we respectfully say that we will not be able to do that.
Yeah, great. So, sir, now, let's discuss another tussle, which is like, should we go on hiring and building a team first, or should we focus because individually, when we are at the starting stage, it becomes very difficult to decide, go full on in business development. If work comes, we do not have a team. So should we start with building a team, or the process goes side by side? How to take that up?
I think you have to balance it, Priggya. Because from my experience, I think I became independent of operations only about 4 or 5 years back. So for a good 9 years in practice, and I'm sure you can vouch for it, when we were working with certain US-based clients for drafting of applications, either I was drafting it with you and with other colleagues in the firm, or there was review happening, etc. So I think for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I was very heavily involved, but that heavy involvement was at not 100% involvement. It was very heavy that I was drafting application, but always at the back of the mind, I knew for the fact that maybe post lunch or for 2 hours or 3 hours every day, business development has to be done. It cannot be one way or the other. It has to be a balanced approach. Initially on maybe 70% operations and 30%, so that you can control quality, you can control clients, you can bring them on board, you can make sure that you are the point of contact, etc. But once things start settling down is when your 70% eventually will come down to 30%, and then perhaps may become 0% if things are very well planned in that sense. So at this moment, I'm glad to be in that scenario where my involvement is almost 0% on drafting or responses or operations per se. But there are a lot of other strategic matters in litigation and on the infringement and other strategy aspects of companies that I find very exciting work on. So I think therefore going outright hiring will not be a good deal, because then people will not see you as a person.
Correct.
So it's your firm's name will surely grow, but your name will only grow when you are the one corresponding. You are the one who gets referred and recommended. So it's very critical that for the first 4, 5, 6 years, you are the face of the firm, not just in terms of being a managing partner, but also very critically that you are the operations person for them to be a point of contact on.
Correct.
That's how you build a foundation, and then you withdraw by hiring good people on board.
Yeah, I think that is very, very important, especially for lawyers or professionals, because people connect with people. People will speak to us and they'll understand that, does this person possess knowledge of patents? Will they be able to draft our application or prosecute it well? If they are giving us international application, they'll vouch on the person who is actually conversing with them. So I think that is very, very important in that sense too.
Absolutely. And in fact, it'll be a gradual, because now that it's been 14 years, when I look at it from a backward perspective, I think that there was never an instance where a client 4 or 5 years in the last 4 or 5 years has ever told me, Tarun, why are you not drafting? Because they've realized that this firm has gone through that cycle and evolved to a level where perhaps maybe Tarun is not drafting for certain matters. It's not that he's withdrawn, but he's a very active member of the practice. But there are other areas that might require attention of a partner or of a managing partner, which is perhaps of a size of maybe 220 people or whatever that it might be. So I think then people also realize, but if you do that from the very beginning in the first 5 years itself, then there will be a disconnect as to why it is Priggya Arora's law firm, and why Priggya Arora is not the one who's in the loop. Why is everything getting shelved off to somebody else? So it's very important that you're doing it for the first few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is very, very important, because the person needs to be connected. They can't dissociate. I have never seen a person giving work to a law firm just And without knowing who the partner is or who is drafting the
Absolutely.
application.
So the work comes to the firm only on your name at the end of the day.
Yeah.
After a while, if you've scaled up, etc., then people will understand that why you are not doing it. But for the first, but the work will still come, because even at this moment, while there is a business development team and other partners in the firm, I think I safely can say that about 70% is coming through, one or two people who probably have been very integral to the firm from the very beginning itself. Other than that, a lot of referral comes because of the firm does good work, etc. But that one or two people who are very clear founders have to be very cutthroat in terms of being involved. And then as you scale, you focus on higher value clients and higher volume clients, etc.
Yeah.
But never lose sight of or never dilute the attention that the startup requires at the same time. That balance has to be maintained, Priggya.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's discuss about the hiring strategy. Like when we first time hire people, what are the aspects we have to look? The financial, the non-financial, all the aspects that we need to consider while hiring.
So I think we made a few mistakes initially on, and I think we learned very significantly from them as well. I think cost was an aspect that we always felt was important as a parameter. But as we matured up, and I think after about 3 or 4 years of our existence, focus was always on quality, even from day one. But again, cost was a parameter, and always when you compromise on cost, you are sort of compromising on quality in one way, because the quality members would not apply at that cost bracket. So you would not know. You would think as if it's an open position, but at a given CTC, there'll be a lot of people who will not apply, and those are the people you would not even know because they've never applied. So I think when I look at it, the hindsight, there has to be a balance. Obviously, outrightly, you cannot have heavy packages flowing in and then suddenly there's not enough work. And also you have to set expectations very categorical that you have to draft, say, an X number of applications, because very hypothetically, if you are charging 25,000 an application, and if there are 10 applications a month that person is able to do, and therefore as a result of it you are able to perhaps make a billing of 250,000, but if that person itself is about half that compensation or 60% of that compensation, then the firm makes very little margin to play with. And when I say to play with, it's not margin that the partner would keep as profit, but you need an amount to reinvest back in terms of business development, infrastructure, better facilities, laptops. These are expenses that are galore, and official fees for that matter, which is also an investment for 3 months. So you're losing all your interest, etc. on that. So I think it is very important to manage the cost, get sample projects done. I would heavily recommend that people do assessment internships. So it's better that people hire maybe not fresh 1 or 2 years, maybe from a different domain, because we've been very lucky to have in the office location, and you've experienced it yourself, to have people who are living nearby who have 30, 40 years of experience, not in IP, but very core technical experience, whom we bring on board and then train for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months, they're as good as anybody else. And by virtue of them having 40 years of experience, their discipline, their focus, their intent, everything is fantastic, in totality. So you have to be out of the box while hiring. You maybe hire people fresh from college, do an assessment internship with them for 3 months. You pay them 5, 10, 15, 20,000, whatever you think you can afford. But don't give them an offer. Essentially, evaluate them for 3 months. And if you see that they have an intent, because intent is one thing that you can never evaluate in an interview. Unfortunately, you can evaluate how consistent he has been if he's changing jobs every 6 months out of the picture. There's no question. Even in a year, there's no question. If in the last 5 years, this is his 5th or the 4th job for that matter, very difficult to, evaluate. And perhaps for a startup, I'm saying, for the first 5, 6 years to get on board such a person, because when he will come on board and we'll realize that it's a small team of 2, 3 people which are disconnected, perhaps in, different offices, we're not even face to face. We saw lot of trouble because of that, because they wanted people to sort of talk to discuss with. Then I and other core members were always tied up in 100 things that we were doing in parallel. So founders would never have time to socialize in the manner in which the employees would like them to socialize. So it's very important that you get like-minded people, set the expectations very clear, that we are a small practice. We are very thorough in what we do. We are extremely hardworking. We want people who are very simple, matured. if you are a firm that if you're a person who needs fancy office and a fancy building, etc., we are not the firm. You have to be very clear about it from very beginning. But
Yeah.
as you grow and as you have more reserves to play with, then you should not compromise on the quality. And then the quality is all what matters, because that person will do even 10, 15, 20 applications for biggest of the clients and would never be compensated by a person who probably is the, because if his work requires review, then your time is taken 30, 40% of your time is evaporated out in reviewing. But if you would
Yeah.
have paid him 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 lakh rupees, whatever, an X amount extra than what a regular person would essentially require, that review time, I always look at it from that perspective,
Yeah.
at least at this moment. If he can eliminate me from the review, he's a great guy to bring on board.
Correct. Absolutely. I think it is so important now that I realize, okay, if I do not have to review a draft and a person, I can hold that draft and send it to the client. I feel so privileged. I save a lot of time, because sometimes review also, that review also take as much time as drafting the
Review takes,
application.
and in fact, it develops more frustration, Prigya, because if the person on board is not doing a good job and if he's making fundamental issues of antecedent basis or his English, then your mind is different, because then you will have to first, for a guy like me, I had to cancel that whole draft,
Yeah.
rewrite it, and that rewriting process is is under the emotion of anger and frustration,
Yeah.
which unnecessarily disturbs your health and unnecessarily has a long term, because all of these aspects have a long term health impact. We cannot say that that the stress that we carry right now we are able to manage it. You would never know, but at the end of the day the body will react to these things. So you
Yeah.
have to look at it very holistically, and I'm saying it now. I obviously didn't know all of this at all earlier, and you are probably
Yeah.
surely more privileged, in that sense, that you worked with a practice for good years, and then how client handling is to be done. I never knew all of that at all. I had, when we filed our first patent application, there was no online filing in 2008. We had to go to the
Yeah.
patent office, and when we used to go and file one application a day physically, of which you have prepared that application in 10, 15 days, that itself used to be a big achievement, which is
Yeah.
not even a billable task. And now we are filing almost about 30, 40 a day, or whatever that it might be. And those days, seem to be completely irrelevant now, for that matter. So
Yeah.
I think very important to get right people on board, but very critical to get simple people on board, even if they
Absolutely.
are not very relevant to that experience. But if they are simple and mature, they will not disturb your ecosystem. They will be focused. And
Yeah.
that is very critical. I think if people are smart enough, and if they act as a smart ass for that matter, it will become very difficult to handle them. So my first preference, and till date, nobody in the firm we've hired where I've not taken an interview, because I need that emotional connect with the person to ensure that he's not acting over smart, or will not be somebody who will not gel into the culture, because otherwise the culture of the firm completely gets deteriorated if one wrong person comes in.
Absolutely, and this is so true. You're speaking of employees now. I think of my interns as well. One intern comes and he'll disbalance the whole ecosystem. And I'm like, you can take the certificate and go, but it's very difficult for you to stay here.
And you can imagine, as you will have more and you will have more people on board, when your team is 50 to 100 people, then it's a complex ecosystem, because when we were 5 people, like for example 5, 6 people, the kind of team that you carry right now, we were all in a table and having lunch across.
Yeah.
We were not virtual. Everybody was there, so you knew everybody. I know everybody in the firm even now, but I have my lunch alone, for that matter. So I don't have that personal connect. Surely is there, but that face-to-face connect, and how are you, and your father's name, and your mother's birthplace, all of that I knew till we were 30, 40, 50, because every day lunch was together, so that bond was. But as you scale, that bond also
Yeah.
slightly dilutes in that sense. And
Yeah.
you have to work with it, and still make sure that the people on board are connected with you, and you do your events together, and you motivate them enough, etc., etc. What should I say? It's a topic for an hours to talk about.
Yeah, so sir, we'll now quickly discuss, because I think this is the interesting one. You have seen so many law firms grown in the past year. So, what do you think are the general mistakes what people do, and how they can avoid them, or what skills they can develop to avoid them?
I don't think I'm the right person to say what wrongs have they done. Maybe there are 3 or 4 things that can essentially go wrong. One is the attitude of the entrepreneur himself. Because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people who probably lift themselves up as they are growing from ground. I think that is the biggest mistake that somebody can do. If you start differentiating clients based on that small client, big client, an individual entity, etc., you're out of the picture. You're not relevant to them at all, and you will not see it immediately, but over a period of time you will see that you are not there as you have to have that extreme level of passion that you had on day one. And it is not just a matter of play. You have to have it. You have to be concerned. You have to think about this all your life. You can have a team of 10, 20, 30 people, but if your intention is to scale up and be one of the top notch firms, etc., there is no moving away from, you're on a vacation, that you check your emails. Can I ever imagine not checking my email for one day? My clients will feel as if I'm dead if I don't reply back in 24 hours. The reminder comes in 6 hours. So you have to stay very relevant. You have to be grounded. You cannot outsource everything, outsource as an offshore, or sort of delegate everything. There has to be a face to the firm. You have to go to attend events and conferences, and speak at as many events as you can. Speak from your experience, and you can only speak from experience when you've done that work yourself. You cannot hear from your other people and say that, okay, I will say that. It will never be from the heart, for that matter. So big mistake, stay grounded, very, very important. Make sure that that you don't antagonize anybody. If he wants to leave, let him leave, but with a lot of respect. If he wants, the client is not comfortable working, there are always clients, 1 in 100 that may not be comfortable with you. As a person, you fold your hands and say that I'm so sorry for the trouble, and then you leave them. But if you have an attitude that gets developed, or if you say that, no, I am now just going to sort of work from home and my whole team will come to office and things will happen automatically, I personally don't think that's a very long way of doing it. One second, you have to focus on the right side of clients. If you are only focusing on foreign clients, maybe as a strategy it may be good, but to me it's a very short-term strategy. You have to represent a balanced set of clients which are able to give all types of works, all streams of work, and then you grow your practice with the right set of people. I think at the end of the day, people, Mr. Wig and Mr. Jan, etc., who've been with us for 10, 12 years, they're pillars, and without them, I can't imagine my life having sort of the firm having grown and we having evolved as a team at all. So I think take care of your team, check their well-being, even if they're in Chennai or even if they're in Bangalore. If you are traveling in a flight, you have a WhatsApp, you connect with them, say, how are you doing? On a WhatsApp, or when on a flight, nothing is connected to the internet. But if you write a WhatsApp to 100 people that you know or can think of, and everybody will be sent soon as the internet gets connected, you at least they would instantly know that this guy was thinking about me. And if you do that, connect with them, stay grounded, are happy with everybody, make sure that nobody is antagonized unnecessarily, and your policies are friendly and consistent, and you're flexible in life in general, I think things will take care of themselves.
Wow, awesome. I think these are small aspects, but so important. Otherwise, it's very important to stay connected, like what the employees are feeling, or what my clients are feeling today about me. So it's
Absolutely.
always important to stay
Absolutely.
connected.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, sir, now we'll discuss something about you, and these are 3 quick questions about you. First is 3 things you are grateful for.
So I think one is always grateful for the family, that your parents. I think there is nobody who probably can be grateful for anything more than the kind of parents that they respectively have. Second is the current family with everybody involved, your daughters, your wife, and everybody. I think unless you have that balance maintained in family, and it'll be extremely hard. I'm not saying entrepreneurs will not be successful, but it'll be harder for them, much harder for them to become successful, because there'll be a lot of stress on the other side. But if your parents are well taken care of and your family is well taken care of and everybody is in a happy state and everything is balanced, you can focus with so much more energy and confidence in the work, that efficiency will never be matchable to anybody who probably had some disturbance in the family. So I think very grateful to family and your parents, and at the end, to your friends and colleagues, work colleagues. nobody can scale up on his own. I can't imagine scaling up more than 10 people or 12 if I were the only one who was running the whole show. Unless you have, good 10, 30, 20, 40, 50 colleagues who are very strong pillars who can independently scale the practice. The Pune office is taken care of by an X person, Mumbai office by another person, and your other office by another person. Then is when you can scale up. Otherwise, so you are managing, and disturbing your health, the more you are stressing yourself out. So I think grateful for these things. Everything else is a byproduct, I would say.
Now, 2 traits that you think are useful for a professional career.
I think I indicated those 2 traits very beginning. Hard work, nobody beats it. And then don't be dependent on anybody else. You should have that, and I'm not saying dependence only from an operational standpoint. I'm saying as a whole, you have to be that person who can talk to clients, who can go into a meeting with not knowing anybody and do business development, do operations, manage your accounts, do your business development, and at the same time maintain your mental well-being. Because if your mind blows in this process, then nobody is to blame. So you should be dependent.
Absolutely important. Now, one aspiration you have for the future.
I think I keep only short-term objectives in mind. Obviously, the intent is to grow the practice, horizontally and vertically, perhaps in other offices outside India, and also horizontally diversify it. So there's no aspiration that I want a Ferrari in 10 years or so. But surely, I think if everybody's together, my aspiration would surely be that the whole team is intact, that everybody, and also perhaps that includes the fact that we work together someday again. All of those are small aspirations that you never want to let go of. Strong colleagues whom you can emotionally connect with. And then as a part of all of that, when everybody's connected, the firm is bound to grow. Nobody can stop that to happen.
Absolutely. So, sir, any final thoughts that you want to give to our audience before we conclude?
No, I think this is where, Priggya, I think thank you very much for the opportunity. But my whole focus was to ensure that everybody should work hard. That is the only way somebody can grow, and make sure that you have a holistic idea, that you are open to hearing from other people. You should not think that my way is the only way that is correct. You should be open, try to understand, and try to speak less. And these are things that everybody says, but they are very true. The lesser you speak and the more you hear from others, there'll be more to learn. If you're speaking, there's no learning happening at all. So if you're in a crowd, I would love to ask them 10 questions rather than them asking me 10 questions. So then because if the podcast were the other way around, I would wanted to understand how you are growing and how your journey has been, and correlate it with how I was. Because that will give me a good idea in terms of my benchmarking, or what wrong we did, and perhaps learn from it or apply it wherever in the future that scenario comes in. And then we have other initiatives. I'm an investor in various startups, and we have a few other portals and domain names also that I take care of. So they're all in different stages of growth, and it's very important that we learn from experiences that we read, and we hear from people who are inspiring, and sort of imbibe it and implement those things.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and your willingness to share. I know for you, taking out this 1 hour would be extremely difficult, the kind of schedule you have. And thank you so much for giving me your time.
Not at all, Priggya. It was wonderful. And I hope you should do a reverse podcast someday as well on you, so that we can understand and learn from how, because these are great ideas that you're working with as well, and it's great for your visibility and for for your presence and visibility in general. So do a reverse one. I'm happy to moderate that session out for you.
Thank you so much. I'll probably do this soon.
Take care. God bless you. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, thank you for attending today's session. If you enjoyed today's session, do follow our channel and consider sharing it with a friend. My name is Priggya Arora, daughter of inspiring parents, alumna of IIT Kharagpur, engineer turned lawyer and entrepreneur, and now founder of PL Legal, where we help creators and innovators protect their intellectual property. Thank you.